Great. We are live. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. We've got a great show for you in store tonight. This is a conversation I've been waiting to have happen for a long time because this is somebody that studies in the things that I'm just kind of playing with. And I know that she's going to educate us on some things that are really going to help transcend your life and business. So what I want to do is introduce you to Jessica Alstrom. She's a spiritual teacher, intuitive life coach, medical intuitive, author, radio show host, and winner of 2016 Soul Food Award for World Server. As a co-owner of Transcendent Wellness Center, founder of Transcendence International Consciousness Academy, and the creator of an online global coaching forum, Quantum Life, she is bridging spiritual development with science to create a complete self-realization platform for students all over the world. Through the use of both her traditional education and her extrasensory skills, Jessica's fundamental work is educating wellness through awareness. Welcome to the show, Jessica.
Wow, you made me sound good there. Awesome.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you here. And so one of the things I just like digging in, just diving in right away. And yep. One of the things I like going with my guests is because, I mean, you put out amazing content, and I've been watching you for a number of years and watching the stuff that you've been putting on social media. And it's obvious, you know your stuff, you understand quantum physics and things like that. And one of the things I saw on your bio here is you're in epigenetics, which I really would like to discuss that a little bit more. So let's talk about, basically on here, we like to talk about where you started and how you transcended into where you're at now, right? So how did you get on this? What was Jessica like when she was younger, and how did she grow up, and how did she evolve to become this incredible person that's making great waves in this planet?
Your typical lost, confused, codependent, battered, abused. I mean, that's usually the story, how it starts out. You know, I was raised in California, and, I have a great family, but, just as we all know, sometimes you grow up with the wrong perspectives. And I absolutely did. Very codependent household. There was a lot going down. I'm not gonna throw my parents under the bus on this show or anything like that. But, basically, long story short, by the time I was 35, I was feeling pretty worthless. Had no idea what I was going to do with my life, had no purpose. Was chronically depressed, had an autoimmune disease, had an eating disorder. My finances were a wreck. My relationships were a wreck. And I just kind of woke up one day. It was 2008, actually, and the real estate market crashed in Los Angeles. And I went, wow, what am I going to do next? Because, we were kind of dabbling in that world. And, growing up in a codependent household, there was one thing that I did know, and that was how to talk my way out of things. So I knew people, and I knew a lot about psychology, and I knew a lot about nutrition. Actually went to school for nutrition, and really always loved helping people bridge the gap between who they were and who they wanted to be. And I think the reason why I loved helping people is because I needed help. It was like, I thought, well, if I help someone else, maybe that will somehow boomerang back to me, because I didn't have a clue. I had not a clue. And, I remember it was in 2008, I picked up my first law of attraction book, and it said, thoughts create your reality and your belief systems determine your perspective. And I went, well, I can do that, right? Because I had gone through every action step in the world to try to make my life work, married and kids and the house, and I felt absolutely numb inside. And so I thought, well, if I can change all of this, I have a very scientific mind. As a child, I was the why kid. Why is the sky blue? Why do we have two eyes? Probably really annoying. I just always had that really scientific approach to my outlook. So when I realized that I had more control over my reality than outside circumstances, I don't know about you, but that excited me more than anything in my entire life. It was like, I didn't have to depend on anyone to say yes, or have the right letters after my name to get the job that I wanted. I knew that I could create my reality, and I didn't have a clue on how to do that, but I knew scientifically that, and and then I started picking up different books, Napoleon Hill, and reading all of this kind of ancient script, going, this is not that big of a secret. It's just something that, probably 1% of the population can actually focus on. And if anyone's crazy enough to do this, it's me. So in 2009, I picked up my kids. We lost everything in the crash. You know, got a divorce, moved to Kansas City, started over, $90 to my name, no checking account, no car, nothing. Moved 3 little girls to, you know, Kansas, thinking that it was going to be easier for a single mom to create a reality here. And I will tell you, that's exactly what I did. And kind of coming to a place where I had no real help and no real assistant, it really put me in the driver's seat of my life. And it's like, well, if you're going to be the scientist, it's now or never. And so I got really methodical about my thinking and about my belief systems and expanded my own consciousness. I learned to meditate. I learned to be accountable to my own mind. I learned to have the conversations with myself. You know, I didn't have a guru. I didn't have a teacher. And I always resonated with quantum theory because of the possibility strings. And, you know, thinking that I felt that we were so unlimited, yet we were so programmed. And I always saw the world very scientifically as, you know, we're just one big smartphone and it depends on what apps you have loaded in your hard drive, you know. And I realized that if I had all this programming, that I could unprogram myself and I could put in within my own energy field the prospects and the potential that I chose. So I decided to first focus on, you know, as a single mom, 2 things. I didn't care about, and this is going to sound horrible, but I didn't really care about helping anyone else. I wanted to help myself. I wanted to give my girls a good life. I wanted to put a roof over our head where we weren't struggling. I wanted to know what, you know, unconditional love felt like. I wanted to have passionate relationships. And, you know, having an autoimmune disease at the time, which I understand vividly now, understanding epigenetics, is all about, you know, that kind of stress that I put myself under my entire life to be someone that I wasn't. And, you know, an eating disorder to try to be perfect and control my own biochemistry and, you know, the depression that went along with suppressing my own emotions. And so when I kind of took responsibility for all of that and started looking within for the answers, I learned how to basically talk to my own body. And that's where my love of epigenetics opened up. And I realized that my DNA was responding more of like a satellite to my focus than it was anything biological. So it wasn't genetic. It was my focal points. So I started, as I always do in my teachings, I used myself as a guinea pig. And within probably about 8 months, my autoimmune disease was completely healed. My eating disorder was completely healed. And I was meditating, you know, 45 minutes to an hour a day. And I was at that point opening up all these new abilities that I had no idea that were laying dormant under fear. So, and that's really what I teach people is, you know, under those goggles of fear that we wear is the superhero underneath, the one with the superhuman abilities and the unlimited potential. And you have no idea who you are until you really dive in. So that's really where my love of science has come. So that's the short story of the long story. But, you know, fast forward, as I began to heal myself, I immediately, you know, started having a bigger calling. You know, it wasn't about the money in the bank because, believe it or not, that came right along with the body healing. You know, finding a relationship came right next to loving yourself. So it wasn't really very much action steps required. And when I see people killing themselves in the action world to get results, you know, I try to teach them about frequencies and being in the frequency of the problem. You actually create a bigger problem when you use action to fix your problems. And when you move into the frequency of solutions, which is all about unlimited possibilities and quantum theory, you only have to spend about 20% of your time in action, which means you become like a magnet to the things that you are desiring. And so that's really my favorite thing to teach is human potential. But my second favorite thing to educate on is healing our own trauma. Because really that's what stops about 90% of our journey. It kills our dreams, it destroys our relationships, and it's very hurtful on the human body to carry around old baggage and trauma. So those two components are kind of where my entire career has been built.
So let's talk about, you mentioned a buzzword right away in the beginning that I want to explore a little bit. So you mentioned that you had this issue with codependency. Okay.
Okay.
So what what would be your definition of codependency? And then where you're at in your life, where do you draw the line of where it becomes codependent or coming from a place of abundance? So how would you define codependency?
Well, to me, codependency is the inability to make a decision outside of someone else or something else's perspective. So if you cannot choose your dream over your job, you're codependent to your job. If you cannot choose, to have a boundary in a relationship, that's a codependency.
Right.
So to me, I was raised with no boundaries. Absolutely. It was really, I was kind of programmed, and I think we all are through society and school and religion and education, to be very codependent in people who know better. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of, handed over the driver's seat to anyone who seemed, better, more educated, more knowledgeable, who had more money than me. Like, I handed over my power constantly to anyone that was doing better than me, and used them as kind of my threshold of, accountability of what was possible. I never really looked at my own self-worth or my own boundaries, or even had a knowing of what I was capable of. All I knew was what other people believed about me. Mm-hmm. And so that kept me very codependent, because we kind of grew up with this mindset: don't do that, don't think that, don't feel that, don't say that, right, don't see that. Mm-hmm. So you shut down this internal guidance system that you have. And this internal, it's almost like your own GPS. If I don't have my own GPS, I'm going to need someone else's in order to navigate my life. Right. So to me, that's the definition of codependency, is using someone else's GPS to navigate my personal purpose, mm-hmm, which will always destroy your joy.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So as far as abundance goes, it's just tapping into your own GPS.
So how do you know it's your GPS? Okay. So you mentioned meditation, right? Which, I mean, yep, there's a lot of things. And you mentioned the other part of, it's amazing how you unleash potential when you remove fear. And that's some of the stuff I do with my clients is remove these filters that you have been, yep, programmed, right? Once you remove those, it's like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. It's like the where the caterpillar transforms into, yes, butterfly, right? And mm-hmm, it's amazing the life that you see on the other side of it. And so how do you know within your, what would you recommend for people to create their own GPS system? I mean, that's an interesting.
First and foremost, we have to use physical reality rules, and I'm all about breaking rules, but I'm a big bridge gapper. So, I teach quantum theory at a 4th grade level. So when you're first beginning this, you really need time and space with your own identity. To me, time and space is one of the greatest healers there is, mm-hmm, because we have this tendency to get quantum entangled. And when I say quantum, I mean, in a 4th grade perspective, focus. Mm-hmm. So if I'm focused on my mom's belief system, or my dad's belief system, or my religious belief system, I am not going to really be able to hear my own truth, because I'm kind of entangled. It's almost like when your charger gets all tangled up and you can't pull it apart. That's literally energetically what it looks like to be entangled with someone's energy. Right. So really, time and space is the first, you need to get that space away from other people's energy so that you can hear your own thoughts. Mm-hmm. There's 3 conversations going on right here. And if there's, 3 conversations going on within me and 3 conversations going on with you, it's going to be a confusing mess, especially if I don't trust myself. Right. So time and space is the first thing. I always teach people about breath, because it's like your thoughts can think you, or you can think your thoughts. Mm. And people don't really understand what I say by that. But I say, you're breathing your body right now. Your body's breathing you. But in any moment, you could take back that breath, right? And deliberately breathe. Thoughts is the same way. So teaching people about their breath, because when you're breathing, you're in the present moment. Mm-hmm. And remembering how to be in the present moment, because we have this tendency to be stuck in the past and fearing the future, and we totally miss the moment where all the power is. Mm-hmm. So those are the kind of 3 components, is getting time and space, learning to breathe, and then remembering stillness. And stillness isn't kind of this scary idea where you have no thoughts. It's just you kind of being present in your body without being in a need or want. It's like you don't need anything and you don't want anything. You're just there. Mm-hmm. And remembering how to do that. What it does scientifically is it pulls your body out of that nervous system reaction of fight or flight. Right. And when you're not in fight or flight, the body wakes back up and it says, oh, we can heal. we can communicate, we can have a conversation. We're not in survival mode.
Right.
So really, it's about scientifically pulling people out of fight or flight. And we use all kinds of bridge gappers to do that. You know, I use my techniques, and then we work with a company that we have a actual neurological device that we use to put the brain into a meditative state in 2.5 minutes. And that kind of overrides that monkey mind, and it puts your brain into a frequency called theta. And theta is the brain wave where we can access potential.
Right.
So, and we teach this, we work with the military, we work with extrasensory children, we work with abused, women all over the world. We work with people who have literally been through any form of trauma. And then we work with logics, the people who cannot get out of their logic mind and into imagination. We use this technology. We've actually even gotten this technology into our major league sports teams here in Kansas City to have access potential. So it can be healed. It can be used to access potential, or it can be here to rewrite trauma. So we use things that are bridge the gap. We're in the age of technology. We might as well use it. Right. We don't have to spend hours in stillness. We can manually override that brain and get it to calm itself down. And through that calm state of peace, you begin to remember who you are. And that's really the basis of my teaching. I don't teach anything. I'm here to remind you of what you already know that you've forgotten along the way.
Right. No, that's great. I love that. And that's, what you were talking about is the conditioning and the programming of your environment. And one of the things that I share with people is like 75% of what you know in your entire life is by the age of 5. Right. And it's that's in the theta development of your brain, right? So it's just infused in there, and there's no conscious ability to really filter it, right? So then you end up getting all this programming, and then you have all these filters that take place. And so that's fascinating. So you had mentioned schooling, religion, things like that. So, and you're talking a lot of science. Does spirituality fall into any of this? I'm just curious on your
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. I mean, I believe that science is one room of a house and spirituality is the rest of the house. So you cannot have one without the other, because, science hits that wall of realism. And reality is a box. So if we're actually going to understand the universe at all, we've got to open up the box. And once you open up the box, spirituality is there. And to me, spirituality is the opposite of religion. It is understanding who you are at a energetic level. And who you are at a conscious level, and how that all of this is just basically a reflection of who you believe you are. And that's really where we tap into spirituality, because I will tell you, I was not raised spiritually. I was not, I didn't go to church. We were very kind of scientifically raised. It was all about the subconscious and, this and this and karma. And when I got older and I had my first meditative experience, I had my first spiritual experience. And I was like, what's happening? Because I was literally like the skeptic, the non-believer. And all of a sudden it was like I opened up Pandora's box.
Wow.
And there was an entire universe that I could tap into now that was the same frequency as nature. And I just understood everything at such a visceral level that I thought, well, how can any scientist really get past any point without spirituality?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we talk about consciousness a lot too. And I don't know, one of the people that I like to follow, his name's Rob Bell. And there's a long story behind him, but if you look up any Christian forums or religion forums or anything like that, I mean, they basically annihilate this guy as a heretic. But the part about it that I like what he teaches, and he's along with, I'm sure you're familiar with Ken Wilber. Are you familiar with that name? Okay, so Ken Wilber talks about basically growing up and rising your consciousness, right? And being able to adapt to things. And what Rob Bell was talking about is he says, we all start out as a particle, and then we went from a particle to an atom, from an atom to a molecule, to a cell, to an organism. But what determined each level of development is that all of those had to combine to go to the next level.
Yep.
Right? And so now if you think about it, if our organisms where we're at now can come together consciously, then we will go to the next level. Right. Exactly. And so I'm real curious. One of the things I've experienced within my own self, because I was on bipolar meds, the whole gamut, major trauma, PTSD, blah, blah, blah. I mean, and I don't minimize that. Anybody that's listening, please do not misunderstand. I'm very, very empathetic about that. It's a struggle. It sounds like you walked out in the desert. I call them my desert experiences, where it's just like, what the heck does this mean, right? Yeah. So when you hit that wall and you start this coming back around, just like the hero's journey, right? Mm-hmm. Did you struggle letting go of some of the beliefs that kept you where you were at? How did that process unfold? Like that what do they call it? Crystalline medicine, when the caterpillar is going in from the caterpillar into the butterfly. How was that experience for you?
Well, it's funny because in that perspective, the I am within me had no problem. I was, 10 miles ahead of where I was subconsciously. Mm-hmm. And what I was realizing is that I knew that if I was in the right frequency, then that I would manifest my reality based on, my thoughts and focus. But what was happening is I was consciously in one place, subconsciously in another place, and I was manifesting both realities, which I call the bittersweet lifestyle, where, you get the money and then the big fat bill at the same time. You get the dream job and the coworker from hell.
Right.
Really, there's three aspects of us, and the yogis called it the mind, body, soul. I keep it really simple. I call it the me, myself, and I, and it's my ego, my body, and the I am within us. So we have this consciousness that has no clue of our trauma. We have this consciousness that's always the dreamer, the visionary, the cheerleader within you. It's the one that never gives up. It's that killer motivation. And then that subconscious is kind of like that bench warmer that keeps losing the journey. Mm-hmm. And so it's getting bitter, and it's getting cynical, and it's getting its heart broken, and it's watching its dreams fade away, and it's exchanging relationships for virtual reality and TV. And the subconscious is kind of like, that iceberg where it's 95% of your energy field.
Right.
So, the iceberg, the tip is the consciousness that's like, we're awesome. And then the subconscious is like, no, we're not. We've failed, and we've got trauma, and we don't believe in ourselves, and we don't feel valuable, and we're not pretty enough, and we're not, all of these, we're not educated enough. And believe it or not, law of attraction is responding to every frequency that we are emitting. Right. So it's hearing my conscious, it's hearing my conscious mind, and it's showing up for all of me. So I'm getting this mixed bag of manifestations. And so when I teach law of attraction, the first thing that people come and say, I've been studying this stuff for 20 years and nothing's happening. Like, I'm still afraid to let go of my job, and I'm still afraid to follow my dreams. And I say, well, the subconscious is basically that runs the body. And so your behaviors are going to dictate that action step, because we are both that physical extension of divine masculine and feminine, and we need both the feminine and masculine to manifest anything. Right. So on a scientific spiritual level, we are manifesting from both our conscious and our subconscious. So when these two consciousnesses are at war with each other, we then generate a war outside of us, and we have conflicts in our relationships, and we have conflicts in our body, and we don't know that we're the problem. Right. We think it's the coworker, and it's the mom, and it's the boss, and it's, the system. And when I teach people about responsibility, and when you look at that word, the ability to respond, that's all that word is. Right. So if I can look within and go, well, okay, this is what's happened to me in my life. These are my programs that are running in my hard drive here. And this is what I need to take responsibility for, is healing my own viewpoint about who I believe myself to be, because the universe is not responding to what you want. It's responding to who you believe you are on a cellular level. Mm-hmm. The cells are the electromagnetic energy that actually bring physical reality into your viewpoint, into your virtual reality. Mm-hmm. So nothing manifests without the body's belief, which is my big study of epigenetics. Right. So if I believe myself to be a victim, no matter how excited my conscious mind is about this business I'm starting, at a subatomic level, if I believe I'm a victim, guess what I'm going to manifest? Right. So to answer your question, I had to get real with myself and go, okay, my conscious mind believes that I'm a rock star, or my subconscious mind thinks I'm a total loser. And so I'm getting opportunities, but then they're not working out. I'm meeting the right people, but the money's not there. I'm, showing up, but nothing's happening. And I can guarantee you everyone that's listening to this show right now has related with that moment where you've put so much of your time and effort and dreams. But what we actually have to do is look at the shadow side of ourselves, that iceberg underneath where all those programs are running. And that's pretty much where our work is on the spiritual journey, is to uncover who we believe that we are and who we believe that we're not. So we can kind of free ourselves from that.
Yeah, you mentioned a very important word, 2 words. One is taking responsibility, right? And the second one is getting completely honest with ourselves. And it's, you know, it's like Carl Jung talks about, what we resist persists, what we can't be with controls our lives, you know, and it's get looking in that mirror and just going, how do I see myself? And teaching people how to get honest with themselves, because we build these relationships with these illusions, right? And it's being able to, and that goes along with what I was asking before, of letting go of those beliefs, of the relationships, of the limitations that we had, and letting go of all this investment that we put into this thing that's holding us back, right? And just being able to let that go. And it's amazing. It just amazes me how, I got clean. My journey started out getting clean from drugs and alcohol almost 30 years ago. And there was a term that changed my life, and it said, we have to live a life that demands rigorous honesty. I was like, what the heck does that mean? But when you start looking at it and going, if I don't start really looking at it going, my life depends on me being honest with myself, right? And then if people put that kind of importance on the responsibility of getting honest with themselves, this world would be a completely different place. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, keep talking. So what are your thoughts on that? How easy was it for you, or challenging, whatever word you want to put, when you, on the other side of the crash, 08 and stuff like that? And it's just like, to me, it was like, I had no different direction to go than up. I mean, it was just, I hit the bottom, and I'd done that so many times that, you know, I used to tell people, it's like, I was the kind of person that got in a rut and decorated it. Right? It's just like, but you know, it's just like, I have no other option. So what was that? Was that like the same?
I'm as stubborn as hell. So I had hit rock bottom so many different times with this understanding, because, you know, again, the new age paradigm is all about thoughts create a reality, but it is really about so much more than that. Right. And so I was really trying to use all the mythology and all of the scientific studies to manifest my reality. And I kept hitting my own subconscious in the mirror, you know, and what I teach people is please don't study law of attraction unless you're going to understand the law of reflection. And the law of reflection is that everything that I actually witness in my reality is a reflection of my higher self or my ego. Right. So if I get triggered by someone, then what it is actually doing, is a message from me to me that says, hey, there's something about that energy that is alive and well within me. So if someone says something negative to me, I actually have to look within and go, where do I really believe that about myself? Because if this is all just a hologram, which it is, and this is virtual reality, then if someone is a feedback system for my subconscious, and I get triggered by that, then that's a lack of responsibility on what I'm doing. So if someone attacks me, I ask myself, where am I attacking myself? If someone ignores me, where am I ignoring myself? If someone doesn't love me, which I experienced a lot of growing up, where am I not loving myself? You know, it's like finding the programs is basically the easiest way to do that is through law of reflection, how people are treating you, what opportunities are showing up for you, what you can manifest, what you can't manifest. Right. People come to me and say, I can't manifest money. And I say, okay, well, what does money represent to you? Well, they're like, well, safety and this and, you know, freedom. And I'm like, okay, where are you not? Let's forget about money. That's the metaphor of the universe. Let's go into your freedom issues. Let's go into your worthy issues. You know, how worthy do you feel? Because believe it or not, if you look at the wealthiest people on the planet, they're not necessarily love and light. They just believe they deserve it. Right. So the frequency of deserving, the frequency of I deserve and I am valuable is the magnet for money. It has nothing to do with you being a good person, unfortunately. Right. You know, the way we're doing it in this, you know, paradigm is we're changing that around. Right. But, you know, holographically, law of reflection says the universe is going to basically bend to my will what I believe about me. Right. So the universe is going to bend its entire reflection to be who I believe I am.
Right.
So I talk about becoming the real you and basically moving into that version of yourself that does believe that they deserve it, that does believe that they're worthy, does believe they're safe, and does believe they're free. With those 4 elements, there isn't anything that you couldn't manifest. You know, I call it the earth game. You know, we're here playing virtual reality, right, and we're here to master time, relationships, health, and money. And once we master that with pure abundance, then we move to timelessness, which means agelessness, which is completely possible in the quantum field. Mm-hmm. We move from relationships to partnerships. And if we understand relationships can be entangled, but partnerships are expansive, mm-hmm, right? We move from health to the archetype of the superhuman, right? And we move from money to prosperity. So we have a lot to look forward to if we can kind of take responsibility for what lies beneath the surface. And we use our accountability through our own virtual reality. I mean, how free is that? You know, when I wake up and go, I mean, here's the absolute peace to wake up with. When you wake up and you say, I am both the solution and the problem. I like that. There is some peace that flows with that statement.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there's another statement that I woke up with the last 10 years of my life is I asked the universe to use me as a channel to help other people see their own potential. And those are the 2 intentions that I pretty much wake up with daily.
Okay, so you're saying that, and I got my own story with around that. So I'm really interested in that. So a lot of people think that asking that question, that things are supposed to just be blissful from that point on.
Right.
And for me, what that meant is if, you know, you talked about the emotion attracts. Okay, so I was introduced to this whole thing. The thoughts are the magnet, or the electrical part. The emotions are the magnetic part. I was like, well, that's kind of weird. But then I had some things happen that was like totally validated that.
Yes.
But getting into this place of being able to walk through that of what does it mean to be able to understand this whole thing about getting, you know, when you see something and taking that on, because I heard this back when I first started getting clean, the hardest thing you have in accepting other people are the things that remind you of yourself.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, so I can take that concept, and I started playing with this a little bit, and I'm like, and then asking the question, why is this bothering me? What is it about this situation within me? And I'm going, okay, if the hardest things I have accepting other people remind me of myself, what is this reminding me of myself? Mm-hmm. And so many things in coaching people and stuff like that, what they say, well, I would never do that to somebody. And what they do is they take it literally yes, interpretation, rather than going, there's something going on there, right? So what's your experience with that?
Totally the same. And I teach, you know, I have an International Academy of Consciousness that this is the premise. This is the basis of what we teach, is that life is not literal. It's metaphorical. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when you are being abused by someone, it doesn't mean that you're abusive. It means whatever that person has experienced to create that abuse, you also hold in your own frequency, which means that hurt people. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's 2 types of people. There's victims and there's perpetrators. And the ego, that's really the only, you know, 2 personalities that the ego can kind of manage. Right. Either they're the victim or the perpetrator. But I believe that we have both of those inside of ourselves constantly. Mm-hmm. So when someone is perpetrating on you, you are being the victim, mm-hmm, obviously. Right. So you can look at it metaphorically. Like when someone says, I don't have enough money. And I said, well, what does money give you metaphorically? And they were like, well, it gives me peace. It gives me freedom. I said, okay, well, then those are the hot spots, not money. We need to go into, you know, when you were a child and you didn't have freedom. We need to go into your household before the age of 7 and figure out where you lost your peace. Because like you said, you know, I teach in 7-year cycles as far as how cells regenerate and how consciousness expands. Right. And at the 7-year cycle, basically we've come to believe who we are. And we have to watch mom and dad to decide, you know, what a woman is, what a man is, what a woman and a man is together, you know, who am I in my community? Who am I in my religion? And then we're kind of taking all these metaphorical notes and we're creating this identity. And so it's the biggest thing that people get in their own way from logic. And so I said, okay, so stop looking at the story and go into how it feels to have no money. Not that you have no money. That's the manifestation of the metaphorical frequency running at a biological perspective. So let's go into the feeling of no money. I'm embarrassed. I'm humiliated. I'm not at peace. I'm not safe. I'm not free. Let's go into those traumas as a child. Right. And all of a sudden, you start getting your freedom energy back through, start moving into the frequency of freedom. And guess what? Your money line opens up, because everything in this universe is just a metaphor.
Right. Right.
So I'm right there with you as far as people getting in their own way based on logic. They go, well, how did he leave me? Or, how come he didn't love me? Or, how come I lost my job? And I'm like, let's go into how it actually felt to lose the job. And I'll show you exactly on the timeline where that trauma is.
Right.
So people
get timeline.
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about it, because I do timeline therapy. So I'm curious to see how you think about that, is because, and based on what I was taught it was based off of Gestalt therapy, right? Going back to the original source of when you took on fear, when you took on guilt, when you took on whatever, and then they all connect, and then releasing that first event, changing that perception, and then it releases the Gestalt. Is that what you're talking about?
Yep, it's all connected.
Yeah. So, and it was amazing what happened out of that so another thing that we did. So I'll talk about medication. Okay. Mm-hmm. Before I do that, I want to take a sidetrack, because this I love this conversation. So I'm sure you're a fan of Bruce Lipton.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. So I just watched a big interview with him and Tim talking about epigenetics, and I just love that guy. It's just amazing what happens, and getting people to understand. And I love what you said about the 7-year cycle. When I was getting into this, of really studying it at a deep level with the unconscious work and stuff like that, it says everybody knows that in 7 years from today, there will not be one cell in my body that I have right now. Okay. In 7 years. Okay. So, and then the skin completely rejuvenates every 30 days. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then they propose this question of going, then why do you have scars? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought about that. But it's the cell memory, like what you're talking about, and being able to release that stuff. And then I've been exploring recently cranial sacral massage. Oh my gosh, it's amazing how the body holds stuff and how it wants to release. It's amazing stuff. So let's talk about this entanglement thing, because I love the whole concept of entanglement. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, quantum entanglement, I mean, you're also having entanglement with your stories in your body. Mm-hmm. It's like, yes, the body will rejuvenate, but there's this moment of the 0 point, if you understand quantum mechanics, where the cell is getting ready to move through its, 11th month cycle or its 30-day cycle. And it literally has this moment of void where it speaks to a super consciousness, and the cell says, are we the same person? And the consciousness says, I believe I am. And then you know what? That scar has to be there, and that illness has to be there. Because again, if I don't change my blueprint, right? If I don't change all the way to the belief system, and when I break down that word, it is being the lie, belief, being the lie. So I am being the character of someone with scars, with someone with injuries, with someone with autoimmune disease. So if I keep playing that character, the universe is going to honor my free will.
Right.
And keep basically regenerating my body. And, down to we've got entanglement when it comes to our belief systems. And then we've got entanglement that comes with collective. Believe it or not, these bodies are actually built to survive thousands of years. But we are tapped into a belief system that says, okay, you live till you're 80, then you're in a wheelchair, and then you die. And collectively, we all take on that belief. We take on that lie.
Yep.
And so the body at 35 says, okay, well, we're on the path to tap into this belief system, because I teach that we're just one big satellite, and the cells are literally pointed to wherever you're focused on. So if I'm focused on lack, then my body is going to play that story for me. Mm-hmm. If I am focused on, pain, my body's going to play that out perfectly, because my body is the biography of my mind. So regardless of the lifespan of a cell, right, quantum overrides any rejuvenation, which means epigenetics is going to override anything that my body could do if I was out of my own way. If I didn't believe myself to be this age,
right,
my body wouldn't be showing up as this age.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about bypassing all belief systems and moving into ideas, so that we can basically move our satellites out of those locked positions of the past. We're carrying lineage stuff. We're carrying genetic you know, entanglement. We're carrying, you know, gender entanglement. And until we get back to our baseline, to our own 0 point within, we don't have a clue that we're just repeating the stories of the past. And we're tapped into identities that actually have nothing to do with us. Right.
And we've been conditioned, right? I mean, it's
exactly. We've been programmed.
Yep.
Literally, this is a biological supercomputer.
Right.
And it was programmed for us for this first 7 years. And now it's our job to kind of clean that out and, you know, declutter the programs and then reinstall the ones that we choose. But then we've got to be present in order to operate our phone. It's almost like, you know, I don't know if you're an iPhone user, but, you know, you get these automatic updates.
Right.
And all of a sudden for like 2 days, like you can't find anything and you can't do anything. And it's kind of like the body will get these updates and it will mess up your hardware. Right. And you're trying to find things. But what you do is you go back to your old rhythms because that's where you're comfortable with, and you don't use the new updates. And so that's what I also teach my students is these updates are coming in, you know, these higher levels of consciousness and energy is coming in for us. But we are so conditioned where it's comfortable that we keep using the old systems because that's what's safe. Therefore, we can't maximize our potential. We go from basically no choice to all choice. That can kind of freak somebody out. You know, I mean, I've witnessed it in my mentorships going, okay, we're moving from no choice to all choice. And it's like, all of a sudden the eyes get big and they're like, I'm afraid of all these choices. I'm afraid of what I could be if I let go of all of these stories.
Right. And you said the word right there, that let go of that all story, because so let's talk about, and I don't know if you're familiar with this term, but I'm sure you're aware of the whole concept of secondary gain. Right? The story that people get out of being something. One of the things that was pretty big for me is me recognizing how I got leverage off of the story that I have being raised, the way I was raised, right?
Yeah.
You get girlfriends, it would help. But the problem was I couldn't get out of that story, right? And so me feeling sorry for myself is what I associated with feeling love. But then I started at this point of understanding that that's not what I want. That's not love. It's sympathy, which is a whole other topic we can talk about. But getting people in touch with the fact, getting them truthful with themselves of the story, the secondary gain that they get out of the story.
Yeah, we teach this a little different, but it's the quantum pain and reward cycle. You know, you're using your own story of pain to reward your own, you know, your own being. So yeah, I mean, again, most people don't even know what a real relationship feels like because relationships have more of an addictive edge to them, you know, and in spirituality, they're called twin flames or things like that. But we attract these relationships that almost feel like heroin, where they're pain and pleasure and abuse and suffering, but you can't let go. And you know, what's the metaphor of that? And basically it's that secondary story you're talking about where we use all these survival tactics to be seen and heard and loved and nurtured. And none of it actually is satisfied because it isn't coming from a genuine heart place. You know, for me, I believe that's one of the reasons why I was such a psychic kid, because I had to be. It was a survival issue. I had to know what people were thinking before they knew what they were thinking, because I always had to be one step ahead of everybody when you're, you know, when you go through abuse. And so it was like, I learned the art of being super conscious as a child and used my empathy, which most of us are, to kind of register the feelings in others, to use it as a barometer for my own safety. And then as I got older, I used it as a manipulation tool. You know, I got into sales. I was like the best salesperson in the world, right?
Right.
So I'm like, well, I know what you're thinking before you know what you're thinking. I know what you need because I know what I need. So again, it's that secondary personality, and it's actually what I call spiritual ego. Because we're using our kind of heightened level of awareness that we've attained through our programs of abuse to try to make our life work. So really it's about kind of flatlining. And I think that's why the universe creates these dark storms for us and these rock bottoms for us, so that we can get back to that baseline and go, who are we without this story? Who are we without this job? Who are we without this relationship? And we can remember that word, remember, put back together, right? Who we really are. And I think that we can't move out of spiritual ego until we get humbled a little bit. You know, those old stories, those old tactics are not working anymore, especially when you're asking to be really loved and for real abundance and for real joy and for real peace. When you start asking for those real things in life, not just the instant gratification of the addictive hit, then you got to start doing the real work. And I think that's why a lot of people stay idle on their spiritual journeys, because they want to stay where that comfortably numb pain and kind of addiction is, versus just surrendering and allowing whatever you want to call the higher power, you know, to kind of help you begin to navigate your own truth again.
Yeah. And you said it on the being familiar. To me, I tell people familiar is devastating to discovery, right? And really having, again, it's that relationship of having wherever it is that they're in that life and not being able to challenge what it is that they believe, because there is tentacles, like quantum entanglement is another way of talking. The tentacles that go out into my beliefs are part of my culture and part of all my friends. And if I change these beliefs, then I'm going to have to deal with the rejection. I'm going to have to deal with all this stuff that goes on. And it's like our unconscious, well, it's not like our unconscious knows this, right? So it goes into this protect mode and go, wait a minute, what are you thinking? And that's that ego. There's a book that I've been reading for a while, and it's deep. I mean, it's just one of those books. It's just like, holy cow, I can only read a couple of pages and ponder on it for a couple of weeks. But it's called the Theory of Celestial Influence. And what it talks about is the three, right? The creator, if you look at it, however you want to look at that, and then the matter, and then the spirit aspect of it. And it goes just along with what you just said, with the body and the spirit and the ego and things like that. And it's everywhere once you start looking at this stuff, of really being able to get past and raise our consciousness. So another thing I want to ask you before, because we've got about 10 minutes left, and I want to ask you are you familiar with David Hawkins?
Yeah, the whole, the frequency spectrums. Yes.
Power versus force, levels of consciousness and stuff like that. So how do you, because you've talked about vibration a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
What does that mean? How would you explain vibration? And I would just love to hear your input on it, because you've worked with lots and lots of people. And so how do you teach somebody what vibration means, or frequency?
Well, vibration is basically a unit of sound that holds matter together. So the way that I teach it, 4th grade, quantumly, is I actually have my own kind of emotional guidance chart. And we go all the way from love down into grief. And I teach that grief is actually below fear, because we use fear to avoid feeling loss, right? So loss is at the bottom of the vibrational spectrum, and love is at the top, right? And then joy and all those good things are in between. And so what I teach people is that their natural frequency is actually joy. It's peace. And ecstasy is super consciousness. So they actually have to go above who they are spiritually to even to feel ecstasy. I mean, look at the drugs that people take. It's because they want to reach that super consciousness, and we want to avoid pain. Right. So we try to stay in this comfortably numb place, kind of in the middle, in this idle boredom where we give up our hopes and dreams, and we live a life of comparison and jealousy. And we don't know that all we are is frequency and vibration. So when I teach frequency and vibration, I use it in emotions and feelings. So, you know, it's like everything is a child's game. You know, we're children of the universe. Right. So it's hot or cold. You know, when you're feeling good, you're in a higher frequency. When you're feeling bad, you're in a lower frequency, you know, and how that you can master your frequency is by being present, you know, like, how do I, because this is what else is, you know, someone will pop on a Skype from, you know, Israel, and I'll be like, how's your day? And they're like, great. And I'm like, no, it's not. Tell me the truth. Because I can feel underneath, right? I'll tell you how you really feel. And I'm like, well, you know, and then the truth comes out, and I'm like, that's actually the vibration that you're emitting right now to the universe. Not that I'm doing great. It's that I'm actually not doing great. So let's go into the truth of that. And how does that feel? Because we use frequency and vibration to kind of disassociate from ourselves as well. You know, we use, and people go, how do I know if it's my soul or my ego? Because it both feels exciting. And this is how I give them that navigational tool, is I say, well, if it's coming from ego, it'll feel exciting, but it will be an urge, which means next day you will regret it. And if it's coming from your higher perspective, which is your intuition, it will actually expand and greaten, and it will make you proud of your life the next day. So I said, when you're faced with that highest excitement urge and you're not sure about frequency and vibration yet, ask yourself, is this going to cause me pain tomorrow? Is this going to contract my life or expand my life? And in that moment, you know, if it's coming from an addictive old program or if it's coming from the soul, because in the beginning, it all feels, we're so detached from our feelings, right? But feelings is frequency and vibration. So I know that if I am afraid, and I feel safe to look at my fear, I'm going to use gratitude as my security blanket to wrap myself in while I dive into my fear, because I know that's going to be a higher frequency for me to stay safe while I investigate my fear.
Right.
So I don't have to avoid my fear. The old paradigm of the spiritual reality was, find relief. Don't feel your feelings. Feel your highest excitement. And I'm like, no, I'm a shadow hunter. Let's go down into the pain, because that's what's going to set you free. Right. But at the same time, you want to use your higher consciousness. So it's like you want to take love down into the pain. You want to take gratitude down into the pain, and that will keep your vibration high and you won't manifest anything negative. But as far as frequency and vibration go, it is basically what your subconscious mind is vibrating at, because it is 95% of your energy. So I ask people, how are you doing? How are you really doing? Right. And then it's like using NLP to like really, neurologistic programming to really get their subconscious to start talking to me. And then the truth is exposed, and now they're telling themselves the truth. And now we can clear up the frequency and vibration, and now we can change the story. Right. So it's all about like that perspective of honoring, what is your definition of success? What is your definition of love? What is your definition of joy? What is your definition of passion, purpose? To me, purpose is where you lose time and space, where it's like you would do it even if you won the lottery, and you would show up and you would never look at a clock. And if you can find that, that's the holy grail, but that can be in a relationship, that can be with a newborn baby, that can be coloring, that could be making music, that could be, speaking on a global platform. It really, there's no significance in the comparison of your expression of joy. It's just finding that signature and feeling valuable enough to go, you know what, even just sitting here, enjoying my children, I'm in a state of ecstasy, which we are all entangled. So I am actually putting this ecstasy into the collective right now and reminding unity that they too can feel ecstasy. And that's really how we make that 100 monkey effect change in collective consciousness, is we become the solution and we become the example.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Great. So let's wrap up here. A couple things. So what do you offer people? What would a suggestion that you would give somebody that could really help them take a look at themselves and being able to switch what it is? And, that whole mirror reflection thing was really, really good. So what suggestion could you leave them with before we close up?
As a way to learn that, or a way
to take their life to a higher level of higher conscious, higher vibration? What would you recommend?
First thing that I would do is I would stop putting other teachers and other people on pedestals. And I would look in the mirror and say, I am the guru. And I would say that my reality is a reflection of what I believe about myself. And if I would like to make changes, all I have to do is start recognizing my metaphor and my pain and my struggles in the things that, I can't make work in my life, my blocks, my stuck points, my failures, and look at everything as experience, and then bring that back into myself, get stillness, get quiet. I really try to teach on a non-guru path where we're all teachers and students. I'm very much a student every day of my life. Right. I would consider myself more of a student than a teacher. I'm just feedbacking what I'm learning about myself, and I'm doing it through all forums, YouTube, podcasting, however I can blab my mouth and get that reflection out there, because I know that if I've been through it, other people have been through it. Right. And the magic is basically in the cave that you fear, which is yourself. And so if you can face yourself and go, you know what, I really am the creator of my reality. And if I created this, imagine what I could create if I just took responsibility for my own power and learned how to use my power for good instead of evil, because we're all just trying to survive, yet we're here to thrive. We're here to create heaven on earth, not just survive our next paycheck. Right. So that would be my advice. And, and then I have lots of different levels of coaching forums for people to be able to follow at the path of their own interest and investment. They're never investing in me or you, they're investing in themselves. Absolutely. If they're following you, they're actually following themselves.
Right. So where can they find out more about you?
My biggest platform right now, believe it or not, is Facebook. And so I have a global coaching forum. I have an online university. We're in 32 countries, but the best way for people to kind of plug into me live, because I channel, all week, every week, I do live question and answer on Facebook. I have a subscription Facebook group called Jessica Alstrom Quantum Life Tika. And that is where they can literally get live coaching feedback from me in the moment on what's going on collectively if they're not ready for my big university, which is, it's a monster of quantum mechanics. And if they're not ready for that kind of investment, I've got like 200 videos on YouTube. I've got podcasts on iTunes. I've probably saturated the market a little bit as far as, dumping fourth grade quantum, mechanics into the collective. And then I've got a free Facebook group called Jessica Alstrom Quantum Life Community, where I just do live, teachings, based on energetic, time ports or solar flares or energy updates, things like that, just kind of tap in. So I've got lots of different places for people to be able to start and put their toe in the water. But you know how this is. You get hungry, you go down this rabbit hole and it opens up this rabbit hole. And the best compliment that I've ever gotten is people tell me that I put the dots together for them. I bridge the gap between this teaching and really help them understand how they can live a spiritual life yet and still be, completely in the driver's seat where they're not handing over their control to someone else. Nice. And that to me is why I'm on the planet. So if I can help someone take their own freedom and their own love and their own power back and become an example, then, I'm doing my job.
And that's awesome. And I so appreciate that. And one of the things, and I'm sure you'll resonate with this too, is one of the things that I really want to put out there is be very, very careful who's invested in your life. Is because people that have gone through it, and I didn't sign up to be a coach. It was just me going through it as well and being able to go through the whole transformation thing. So can you comment below the links for your group? Could you do that for us?
Yep. I'll have Susie put all the links in there. I got a ton of them. They can also go to my website, which is just jessicaalstrom.com. Cool. That's the easiest, fastest way. But I'm with you on the influence because, we are energetic beings. And so I always say you become like the 5 people that you surround yourself with. Yep. And, if you wouldn't want to switch places with their bank account or with their belief systems, you might want to rethink. But I've noticed people on the journey anyways, you get on this journey and you start shedding. You start shedding those relationships. You start shedding those toxic agreements and you move into that kind of place where you feel alone for a while until you kind of recalibrate with the next level of people who are, on that same journey as yourself. But I agree with you completely. You are who you believe yourself to be at the base. Yeah. And people are I believe that people are more influential than any toxin on the planet.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that, my great obsession, and you mentioned many times, is the potential. I am obsessed with potential, and it's just, you can't create or destroy it. Right. So it's really us walking out in our truth. So Jessica, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Back on down the road again. This is great stuff.
I'm sure we'll talk for another 6 to 12 hours.
Right. Well, I appreciate it. And again, if you could have Susie comment the links down below, that would be awesome. Thank you so much again.
I will.
Have a great night.
All right. Thanks for having me.
All right. Namaste.
All right.
Thank you. Take care.
Yes, absolutely.